It's difficult to persuade the NRC to change and to be a more forceful regulator, and yet it can be done. And this is a particularly important opportunity. I am just so awestruck at what C10 has done over the years. Monitoring this ASR since 2009, taking every opportunity to bring the issue up to the regulators, getting involved in this license amendment proceeding with a very, very well-prepared hearing request. I can't tell you how unusual it is to get a hearing from the NRC.
We actually won standing before the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board for 5 contentions, which were rolled into one overarching contention that has to do with the topic of representativeness. They decided to make their own concrete, and they made their own concrete in Texas from aggregate and sand from another part of the country, and decided that they would call that representative of Seabrook concrete. Well, none of us were experts in this. I mean, it's obvious to you as you're listening to me that I'm no expert in this, but even we knew that there was something fishy about this whole scheme. And we decided to, try to find the experts necessary, and through some tremendous good luck on our part, we found our way to Dr. Victor Salma. Next year, the owners of Seabrook have conceded that all of the concrete in the safety-related structures, which would include the spent fuel pool and the reactor containment and the concrete within the reactor containment, all of those structures have or probably have some level of ASR in them. We have now filed evidence before the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board, the gist of which is calling for the revocation of the license amendment request. And because of that, that then throws into question the validity of the license extension. That's where we stand today.
I decided to be involved with C10, and forgive me if I say that I wanted to do it pro bono, because I feel very strongly that as part of my academic involvement, it's part of what I'm supposed to do, to educate not only students but also the public. Basically, it is sad that ultimately a citizen group like C10 is the one who ended up doing, as far as I know, the first independent experts review of something as important as the Seabrook licensing license amendment request. For those of you who are not familiar with concrete, concrete is essentially cement, aggregate, sand, and water. Well, sand can also be reactive, and the sand would react much quicker than the aggregate because it's much smaller. It has what we call a larger surface to volume ratio. So the sand would react immediately, almost immediately, but the aggregate would react later on. So those are subtleties which are important in properly understanding what is going on at Seabrook. So how does ASR affect the nuclear plant, which is getting closer to our problem? The biggest concern is the shear strength during an earthquake. So basically you have a cylinder and you have a lateral load due to earthquake. The structure is to resist what we call shear forces at the base. As a result of ASR, there is room for concern. So the biggest concern is whether or not the structure can resist the seismic excitation. Especially that we know that those structures do not have what we call shear reinforcement. There is vertical reinforcement, there is the differential reinforcement, but there's not out-of-plane reinforcement. So this is a major concern. It's really the response of the structure when it is subjected to lateral excitation. However, what they have happened is that they have made an amalgamation between testing beams and testing materials. And my concern is that those beams, I think it is somewhere here, were not really representative. In other words, they made assumption as to what is representative of a nuclear reactor and let's test it. Well, it is not representative. The details can be found in some of our report. The concrete mix was supposed to be identical, similar, representative, depending on which version of the document you read, you will see different adjectives. They use a limited amount of aggregate from a source close to Seabrook. There's no indication in the period document that it is identical. I'd like to compare concrete with bread. Bread is essentially made of flour, water, yeast. You mix them in different proportion. You can get a pita bread or a French bread or a chapati or whatever you want. If you use different sources of ingredients, you can get a better French bread in Paris than you can ever get one from Whole Food. Why? Because we don't have the same type of flour here. Okay, and even water is important. So it is not enough to say, well, we have done tests and we got a representative concrete in Seabrook. That's not enough. Okay. One of the great concerns I have is that the specimen were cracked even before starting the test. This is mentioned in the public report. Another part is redacted. The picture I am showing you here is a crack taken, a picture taken from the PhD thesis of a student at Texas. Specimen tested for shear might have cracked even before the test started. It's not clear how many, not enough details, all of them, but at least that was of enough of a concern that it was reported. By the way, the first series of tests were performed in Texas, and it was a very simplistic analysis, and certainly not one commensurate with the gravity of the situation. Coming from academia, we like to have, or sometimes we don't like to have peer review. What is peer review? You write a piece of research, you summarize it in a paper or in a manuscript, you send it to a journal, the journal would send it to people that you don't know, who are expert in the field, who would criticize what you have written, and will come back at you saying, piece of garbage, turn it down, not even think to resubmit, or there is some value, modify this, address this question, clarify this, and resubmit. And sometimes you have to go through 1, 2, or 3 iterations before a manuscript is strong enough to be published. We follow the same process whenever we are dealing with important structure. This is very, very commonly done whenever you are dealing with a major structure which had been analyzed or designed by one entity, no matter how good they are. No matter how good they are, there has to be a peer review assessment. As far as I know, this was not done. Is Seabrook operating safely now? Well, I would say we really do not know. I don't know because the tests and analysis conducted are fundamentally inadequate. As I mentioned earlier, monitoring, analysis, and testing are very tightly coupled and intertwined, and each one of them was shown to be independently inadequate. This is the very first instance where ASR occurs in a nuclear reactor. Probably it's not the last one. ASR takes many years to manifest itself, especially now that we want to extend the life of nuclear reactor from 40 to 60 and from 60 to 80. We are going to have more and more structures separate from ASR. I bet you anything that there are going to be more. If a structure in Texas next month or next year or next 5 years suffer from ASR, and the current approach has been approved, all they have to do is to take the procedure followed by Seabrook and apply it, and garbage perpetuate itself. And that's how eventually it will be a question of time before we have a major accident. I really, really believe that NRC should step up. Do you think NRC had adequate basis to relicense Seabrook for an additional 20 years? It's no. Simple as that.
The NRC allowed the owners of Seabrook next year to maintain a proprietary status for the testing and analysis that was done. And there are two aspects to the consequences for that. On the one hand, the owners of Seabrook are saying that their intention has been that they would then be able to sell to other reactors the methodology necessary for testing and monitoring for ASR should it arise at other reactors. But the consequence for citizens is that there was no peer review. They were able, because of this proprietary status, to keep it entirely away from scientists like Victor. The only reason that Victor was able to see the proprietary documents was because he became part of our case. So that was how this proprietary status has worked to NextEra's benefit that isn't mentioned very often. And that is why we are calling for peer review being a crucial part of any testing and analysis methodology that is to be accepted for a license amendment for ASR.
You all got 5 contentions admitted, raising concerns about ASR. You know, Seabrook's been operating since when? 1990? And you know they just got relicensed for another 20 years from 2030 to 2050. During the licensing period, any concerns you have the burden of proving to the NRC that your concerns are serious. When a licensing decision is made, this license amendment request, for instance, and the license renewal decision, those are pivotal moments where NextEra, the license applicant, has the burden of proving that whatever they're proposing is adequately safe. That this program they've proposed to assess and monitor ASR at Seabrook is adequate to not only carry Seabrook through the first license term, but through a second license renewal. If we succeed in the hearing in September, the 24th through the 27th,
Right at City Hall.
if the license amendment request is denied, if Seabrook is forced, as we think is necessary, to go back to the drawing board, that means they have to redo this program for both the current license term and the license renewal term. And this is your opportunity. It's not going to come up again. We have Victor, he doesn't blow his own horn, but he is the world's leading expert on ASR. This is an extraordinary piece of luck that he has donated his services to C10 to make sure that the NRC is told what needs to be done here to do it right, to be safe. And I'm charging for my time at a public interest rate. I'm not charging what most lawyers in Washington, D.C. would charge you, but I'm putting in a lot of time because I believe this is a very important case and you have a very strong case. So when Chris says this is the moment to support C10, I agree. This is an important moment. The work that has gone into this over the years, and I can see how many people are involved. It's really an awesome group. And I just want to encourage all of you, show up to the hearing in September. These judges are going to want to see that people care about it. It matters.